Today we are going to talk about maintenance of your smart home, or to be more exact, maintenance of Home Assistant. There are some tasks that you should do every couple of weeks, months, depends on what type of the system you have and also what kind of changes and how often do you make. So let's get cracking. As I've said, today we are going to talk about a couple of tasks that you should do every couple of weeks or couple of months. Depending on what system I'm looking currently at, some of the systems I look every 3-4 weeks, while on other systems I check those things once, twice or 3 times per year. First thing, of course, you should look at is backup. But no, today we are not going to talk about how you should set up the backup. That's the topic of another video, and actually I did make a video about couple of years ago on one great component called Home Assistant add-on Samba Backup. It should be linked somewhere around here. No, today we are going to talk about something else. Do you clean your backup directory? Depending on what tool you are using, how you're automating your backups, you should check that you do not have too many backups in your backup folder, because you may run out of disk space. So first things first, let's check out my backup folders. If we go to Settings, System, Backup, we can see that I have only few backups here. My system is configured in such a way that it is keeping 4 copies of the backup in the local folder and another 20 copies of the backup in remote folder. For that I'm using Home Assistant add-on called Samba Backup. That tool is also great because you can use it to customize and automate your backup tasks, to do full backups, but also to do component backups, depending on how often you want to back them up. For example, I have one full backup on 18th of March and then the next one on 25th of March. This means that the next backup will be one day before the official release of the new version of Home Assistant. So whenever the new version of Home Assistant is released, I already have full backup of my system. Besides that, of course, each time I upgrade any of the components, core component, add-on, etc., I also make a backup copy of that same component. And what you should do every couple of weeks or couple of months, depending, as I said, on your system, is check out that if you have too many backups, you click on it and press Delete Selected Backups. While on this main system, that shouldn't be the issue because I think I have around 256 gigs of total storage for this instance. On my green, this can be an issue. And maybe you've seen in my system monitor video that I did last week that I'm having issues with the free space there. So that's one of the things I do every week on that system. Make sure that I do not have too many backups, and also if everything is working, I remove all of the backups from that system and keep them somewhere safe. Currently on this system I only have 2 backups, one is core and the other one is ESP Home add-on update, the latest update that was a couple of days ago or a couple of weeks ago. Same goes for this remote location where I have multiple backups, but I also have enough space so I can keep up to, I don't know, 40, 50 or even 100 backups without having an issue with the space. While, as I said, this is not something that is mandatory and you shouldn't need to look at that folder each day, depending on the system where you have Home Assistant installed, you should every couple of weeks, months or once or twice a year check the files there and delete all the old files in that folder. Next thing we need to talk about is log files or logger component inside Home Assistant. If you have configured your system out of box, it should be recording everything up to info or information level. So information, errors, warnings, etc. The bug information should not be included in the standard logger files or log files. Second thing, you should not be afraid, really not that much, unless you of course have OCD and this really bothers you, is the number of errors or warnings in my log files or your log files. For example, I've rebooted this system today and I have already 417 errors and 279 warnings. You can see that my system managed to collect around 27,000 both of errors and warnings in the log files. And I'm really not that bothered with them, because I know that some of the things I can just ignore, other things are out of my scope and I cannot do anything about them, and some other things really require a lot of work, so that's why I haven't bothered to fix them up. But I will show you one neat trick. If we go to Visual Studio Code or whatever editor you're using to edit your configuration files, and inside your configuration YAML file, or in my case in separate file called logger, I have set up logger in such a way that I'm only recording warnings and above. So it's warn, warning, error and critical, I think. Everything below that is not recorded in the log of Home Assistant. One additional thing you can do if, for example, you are debugging specific component that can be either internal Home Assistant component or hex component is to enable additional line called logs, and then, for example, enable logging, debug logging of cast, this is a Chromecast, and also, for example, custom component called YouTube. If I would enable those two, that would mean that in future everything will be logged for those two components with much more detail in log files. But this is something that you do not want to have always running. Yes, your log files can really explode because of that. Only do that if you're actually debugging something. But no, this is not what I wanted to show you. I have created one automation. Actually, I haven't created it. I borrowed the code from Carlo. This is the code. I've created an input select called logger level with the name log level. Options are all the options that logger takes, from not set, debug, info, warn, warning, error, fatal up to critical. Define that initial value is warn, and I've added the icon. This by itself doesn't do anything, but if we combine this with an automation, such as this one here, where the trigger is change of the state for the input select, we can use service call logger.setLevel to set the level of logging inside Home Assistant. And what it allows us? It allows us to dynamically choose what type of logging we want to have currently in our Home Assistant. Let me show you how. I've just added one drop-down list. We see that current log level is warn. I can change it to critical. It would trigger the automation, or I can change it to debug. And once again, it would trigger, and now my system is recording every single piece of information and putting it inside the log file. Let me turn that back to warn. While this by itself will not help you maintain your system, it will help you with the next task, and that is checking out our log files. Yes, you can start digging inside Home Assistant log files any minute you want, but I recommend that you restart your Home Assistant because some of the integrations may show errors during the startup process, and also you may notice some configuration issues there that do not stop Home Assistant from booting up, but can interfere with the future operations. So restart your Home Assistant, go to either Visual Studio Code or whatever editor you're using, or you can go to Settings, System, click Logs, and then load full log. Here we can see all the errors, notifications, or warnings on your or my instance of Home Assistant from the boot up time. For example, I see that there is an error while setting up the sensor. For now, I will ignore that one. We see warning that the Telegram integration is using upstream library. This is not something that we can fix by ourselves, but we can nudge the developer of integration to tell them that they should swap the library used. One thing we can fix, for example, is this one here. Error, platform automation doesn't generate unique ID. And this is the ID of that automation. What we can do is we can copy it, go to editor of your choice, search for that automation, and then either replace the ID, or if you do not need that automation anymore, you can just remove the automation completely. I've used generate UUID, so I have unique ID now. If I save and restart Home Assistant, that error should be gone. Then we have information that failed to initialize notification service Discord. This can mean that there is an error with the Discord configuration. And I bet I know what the error here is. I have two systems that are identical copies, and both of them are trying to use the same service, and because of the credentials, authentication, etc., this is probably failing because of that. For each of the systems, I should create separate Discord account or separate authentication token on Discord and use that in each of the systems. Or to put it another way, use unique authentication token in each of the systems. Then we have an error with the Ryan configuration. It's trying to create an image, but unfortunately it fails. We can then go to the GitHub repository of the Hex Ryan component and check there to see if anybody has reported an issue. If nobody has reported the issue, you can just copy this here and create new issue. with this code there. The developer will then probably ask you for more information, and with that you can help developer fix this component. Then I see error, Home Assistant cannot connect to this IP address, which is okay in my case, but remember, each time it tries to do that, and that is connect to that specific IP address, it fails, it generates one warning. Why? Because this is probably the ESP home device that is powered by battery, and it will not be permanently on, so Home Assistant cannot actively reach it and read the data from it. Instead, it needs to wait for this device to wake up and send back data to Home Assistant. But because of that, I have a lot of errors like this in Home Assistant. Then I have a bunch of errors inside MQTT. Unfortunately, this is because of the component I'm using. This is not a standard Zigbee to MQTT, for example, Geiger-Miller counter. Instead, I'm using additional hub, something that I haven't featured on this channel yet. This is a third-party hub, and it is talking directly to MQTT. And yeah, because of that, this is unfortunately something that I cannot fix myself. Instead, I have to go once again to developer and tell them that they need to fix the topic itself. And that's how you slowly go through the log file, try to see if there is anything meaningful there. If you do find, Google it a bit and try to fix as many errors as you can. But also remember, it's not the end of the world if you do have warnings and errors inside your log file. In the video I released last week, I showed you how with the system monitor you can create automatic notifications if your disk is getting filled up. And my green unfortunately doesn't have that much disk space, so every now and then I have to go and clean it out. One of the things that you can do, of course, is to remove the backups, and I've showed you how and where you can do that. But the other thing is, the database on this system is growing with every new day. So what do I do to maintain the database? Of course, what I show you now here, you can also automate and create automation for that. But so far I haven't created automation. I just every couple of weeks go to developer tools, services, type in purge, recorder purge, select how many days of the database you want to keep. For example, for the test purposes, I will say 120. This can be 10, 15, whatever. It will then try to delete every entity or every record in the database than the days that you specified. So anything that is older than 120 days, in this case, will be deleted. And the next thing I like to do or prefer to do is also enable repack. If you enable repack, it will not just delete the things from the database that are not needed anymore or that are obsolete or too old, it will also try to repack the database, and with repacking it can even shrink a little bit more. Then you click on Call Service. This process does take some time, depending on the speed of your system, the system that you are using, the speed of the disk, etc. But around 10, 15, 20 or 30 minutes should be sufficient for most of the systems for database to get purged, to remove old entities from the database, and also to repack the database. You will not see instantly the results unless you have a super fast system with super fast disks. This is an example of the graph of how it looks. On my system, the drive was filled up to 95%, then I started the purge and repack the process. The usage of the disk dropped to 90%. If you are like me and like to play with things and like to install a bunch of Home Assistant Community Store components, integrations, test things up, delete things, not remove everything, you may have a lot of non-working automations, missing services, missing entities, etc. The easiest way for you to fix that one is, and of course it can improve the system performance, not by much, but by some small degree it can. Yes, we need another Hex component. If you haven't already installed, go to Home Assistant Community Store, click on Integrations, Explore, and type Watch for Watchman. Click on Install, Download. The latest version at the time of the recording is version 0.6.1. Click Download, and we will have to restart our Home Assistant. After restart, go to Settings, Integrations, click on Add Integration and type Watch for Watchman. Click on it, select an area, finish, and now go to Developer Tools, Services, and type in Watch for Watchman. We want to enable Create File Report. If you want, you can send notification. I will disable it. I will not be specifying notification service. I will be using this parse configuration, and I will not be using this chunk size. call the service. And now if I would go to Visual Studio Code or whatever file editor once again you are using, in the configuration folder, we should see file called watchmanreport.txt. Click on it. And here you can see missing services and missing entities. We see that we are missing open UV update data in the automation. We have missing automation for Travis build, and in the intents I have one service that doesn't exist, that's light.turn whatever. How I would fix that? I would go to the automation YAML file, search for that service and either fix it with a service that does exist or simply remove that specific automation if it's not used or doesn't work anymore. The same would go for the entities, and then you just go to the list one entity at a time and see if they do not exist anymore, if the names have changed, if the entities are not used, have they been renamed, or whatever happened with each of those entities. For example, a bunch of the entities that you can see here are leftovers from me testing things in my Home Assistant. But some are not available because the system it is monitoring is currently offline. This sensor, Warren sensor, is missing because my printer is currently offline and I have restarted Home Assistant since, and that's why it wasn't able to pick up the data for this sensor. After you have fixed your services that do not exist or are not working anymore and your entities, and by the way, most probably you will still be left with a list of entities that are currently not available but actually exist and are used. For example, in my main setup I have a couple of mosquito repellents in my kids' rooms and they are currently offline because with the outside temperature and the snow we had on last Sunday, I'm not expecting to see any mosquitoes soon. So that means that the sensors are currently not working, but they will be picked up in Home Assistant as soon as I replace the batteries and commission or start using once again those devices. Okay, so far we checked the backups, we made sure we have backups, but we also made sure that we don't have too many backups. We played with the log files and we now have option to dynamically use whatever type of logging we want in Home Assistant. We purged our database. We checked for missing services and entities. Now it's time to do one thing that really you should do regularly, and that is update your Home Assistant, but also Hex components. If you see updates available for your instance, either in the Hex, or if you are using the new updated UI inside the updates for Home Assistant, you should fix them by clicking on it, pressing on install, and installing all of the updates for your system. Next, check to see if there are any repairs that you can fix. For example, this one I can ignore. The speaker was probably offline at the time when the system was trying to reach it. And by updating your Home Assistant with the latest fixes, your supervisor, your OS, add-ons, but also Hex components, you are making sure that your system is running the latest stable and bug-fixed version. But also you're making sure that your system is up to date in terms of security standards. And the last thing I would recommend for you to do is to go to Statistics and check here if you have any issues that you can fix. Click on each of the issues, see what is the issue, and then either delete it or try to fix it in the backend. Most common thing that can happen is, for example, device is not sending any updates to the data. For example, device is not working anymore or you are not using the device. Second thing that can happen, for example, is that the unit of measurement has changed. For example, it was measuring wind in meters per second and now it is measuring the wind in kilometers per hour. Because of that, there is discrepancy in the database and database wants you to fix it. There are two ways on how you can fix it, but go through each of those errors, click on it, see what's going on. For example, this entity has no state, you can simply delete it. Same goes for this one, and so on and so on. This will make sure that also your database is clean. This task can be done after purging, or you can do purging once again after you finish doing that task. And after we've done all of those tasks, you did your monthly, quarterly, yearly maintenance of Home Assistant. The last thing you should do is, of course, restart your Home Assistant and then once again go to your log files and see if maybe you've broken something by fixing something. But now it's time for you to react. And how you can react? By clicking the like button and also making sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss my next videos. But no, actually, this is not what I wanted your reaction about. I really want to hear what are your maintenance tasks inside Smart Home and or Home Assistant. Do you use any third-party tool, Hex component, or something else that I haven't mentioned? And what are some of the practices you have been using in your Home Assistant? I really would like to hear, especially if you did find some gem that I didn't mention today. But yes, don't forget to subscribe because next week on the 4th of April I will be releasing fun video comparing bunch of the controllers. And maybe there will be even some kind of a giveaway. We will see. Also, if you are YouTube channel community member, don't forget to check the community tab inside my YouTube channel. There is an important message for all YouTube channel members. Go check it out. Please, please, please. And before I wrap up the video, I really would like to thank all those wonderful people that are supporting me and that have become YouTube channel members. Thank you all for all of your support. But let's not forget each and every one of you who has watched, liked, subscribed, shared, or commented on my videos. Thank you. If you too want to support the channel, you can do so by clicking the join button down below and becoming a YouTube channel member for only €2 or $2 per month. Or you can go to my merchandise store and get something there. I will be seeing you next time. Until then, bye bye and have fun.